All right. Good morning. Happy Monday, gentlemen. Bob here, back to break down some more Bitcoin. Right down to it. No time wasted. So let's talk about this just real briefly. I think that we could all say fairly safely at this point that we in fact have managed to put some green in here. I said it was coming. I don't know if anybody actually believed it or not, but here it is. So here's basically what I'm looking for at this point. And I think, just kind of looking at what I'm seeing here, think of this essentially as a parabolic drop. It doesn't 100% look like one, but this is as close to a parabolic drop as you can get without being straight down. These ones were stronger candles 2 weeks, but like this thing just has the formation of a just textbook parabolic drop. So what we're looking at here, and again, we've talked about this before. I think it could be something that looks like this, where we get these back-to-back green weekly candles, and you see Bitcoin take out several levels of this fib chart here. But I think the more likely outcome, and this is just me looking at it at the moment, is that this week I doubt we get past this level, this $34,000 level, and I might even be surprised if we get past 33. And then it would maybe look more like this, where that third week is the one that kind of rounds it out and gives us that final push up here to this $36,000, $37,000 range. And then actually ends up turning into a red candle. Alternatively, I think that we could put together 3 weekly candles that are green, but what'll happen is this thing will fire up at some point during the week, get knocked back down just like this guy did here. This one, at one point last week, we were up to 32.5 from about 29.5, but it sold off and it actually closed the week at just under 30,000. So I think it would be far more likely to see it kind of eke its way up just a little bit each week. So these first 2 weeks, maybe, pop, sell off. And then really, I just want to see it close the week right on top of here or here, ideally. But I think this is probably the more likely outcome, is that we actually close out the week right where we're at now. And again, I don't know if that'll end up being the case, but I do not expect this thing just to fire off another, $4,000 this week, $5,000 this week, and actually maintain it. I don't foresee that being the case, but it could be, and we shall see. But yeah, in terms of, and actually let's get that out of there again for a second. But in terms of the weekly high and low, if we do come back down at all, you could anticipate that it would be a retest of the low from this week, most likely. Since last week we did not put in a lower low than the week prior, and I don't know if you can see it on my chart here because it's all covered in garbage, but here you can see very clearly the weekly low from last week was much higher than the weekly low from the week prior. It never fell below the candle close, really. And even higher than this week. The wick came down lower. So again, if I just look at this and I think to myself that we get some sort of a price mirror situation, again, the most logical place to look would be, a high this week of 31 and change maybe. If we do see this thing fire all the way off up here, then I'm immediately going to say, well, we would be short up here because I don't anticipate that it's just going to fly right through there. And who knows, maybe that rolls over and comes just back down to here. And that would actually be perfect. Here, this thing ended up kind of double bottoming, right, on a weekly basis, but it just never, it didn't have enough strength to get back up the other side, or it just didn't actually fully double bottom, right? We didn't get closings down here. So if we can come up here and then come back down and actually close again at 29, 30,000, that would be a very strong double bottom there. Could we get something where this thing comes up, rolls over, puts in a subsequent lower low, chops for a few weeks, and then bursts up matches this side, so we actually get like a inverse head and shoulders. So picture this, right? Like picture this price action moving up here, coming back down, you know, over the following weeks, putting in some lows down here, but kind of leveling off, right? And then it fire back up to this side, come back down, retest this level, and then off and running. So there are a few ways we could come out of this. And again, we've been talking about it for a while. Probably this is a falling wedge. It sure looks like one. Typical breakout would be, or a typical handling of this would be a breakout, retest, typically at a lower level, and then off and running. So this thing could actually come up and then just V the hell out of there. But yeah, again, I mean, I've been saying, and I thought this week was going to be the green one, but it was right behind it, right? We weren't that far off. We got our green week. We're starting out green. Fully expect that this one's going to end up being green as well. And again, it's just a matter of what the top side ends up being. It's either going to be, we should exceed this high. I don't see any reason that we would not get a higher move than this, but it may take several days, right? Like it might be something where even right now, kind of at $31,400, $500 level, and I'll show you in a minute why it is that we're probably struggling a little bit there. But this is what we want to see right here, and I've been waiting for this to take place. This is essentially the final cross before this comes into play. So the 21 crossing the 80. Or excuse me, the 21 crossing the 100 here. That's the final one we were waiting on. And now it's, once this thing crosses over here, there should be a lot less downside pressure from the crosses. And then it'll just be a matter of trying to get the support of the 21, which it probably won't happen the first time. So again, that's where I'd say it seems fairly simple to look at this chart and say, all right, yep, this is going to be the definitive high. Like if it wicks up above, great. But it would probably end up looking similar to this, where you barely wick above it, and then you end up just dumping down the other side. Let's see what the let's get the drawings back on the chart here, and then let's take a look at the daily on this guy. Let's blow this back up. So this thing has been just a pain to watch. I mean, honestly, it's been total pain. A couple different things here, and I don't know. So this trend line here, and this is the one I'm using to dictate and indicate that this thing is indeed in a falling wedge. And you can see where respected, broken, respected again, broken to the downside, and we're within this pattern. Now this is the interesting thing right here. I still don't know what to make of this little formation on shorter time frames. I mean, it kind of looks like it's rounded out into a little rounded bottom, and if it is, then it's feasible too that this thing could come up here, get hard rejection, and then just cascade down this way, cup, handle. I'm far more inclined at this stage, at least, to believe that we actually do put in a little more work here and actually do manage to break through here. But I don't know. The difficult part on this one is that this formation here in the RSI. So if we take a look at this is essentially it's looking like a rising, broadening wedge, which is technically speaking a bearish pattern. So imagine this right now. Say that we get our green day today, and then somehow Bitcoin decides to go ahead and put in another green day tomorrow. What you probably see is this is going to act as a pretty hard cap for now, today, potentially. And who knows, maybe it keeps firing up. If it does keep firing up, then at some point it comes up to here, and that's the end of the move. Okay, that's the end of the move. The likelihood that it breaks out of there is fairly slim, although definitely in when markets are bullish, these things do break to the upside. But I don't know. I don't necessarily foresee it being so bullish to the point that it actually breaks out of this to the upside right now. If it happens, great. If not, we're prepared that it's not going to happen. So I think it's fine there. That all being stated, here's what's going to hold down the price action for the moment, and it's not going to hold up forever. But you can see here, We've got and actually this is the wrong time frame, but I was watching this all weekend, and as soon as we got above the 21 simple on the daily, I knew that this was going to be a really nice day. So and obviously it turned into one. Now again, the question now simply becomes: does it have enough gas to get through this level? Because again, you can see here rejection previously, currently rejected. This was the break above. If Bitcoin doesn't put in a higher height today, it pretty well has no choice but to come back down the other side. And then we'd probably come back down in here, test this 30,500 range, maybe down into this 30,000 even. But I could easily make more arguments that this thing will end up rolling over on itself, even today or tomorrow, right? That I could fairly easily argue that point there. But again, I think it's reasonably feasible as well that it could come up here today, potentially, and put in a touch here. But you can see the amount of movement that would take, right? Like that's we're already sitting at about a 5% increase on the day. Well, let's go ahead and take a look and see how much more increase. Bitcoin would basically have to put in a 12% move in one day, and that's not a vastly common thing for where we are in the cycle, or at least it has not been. I mean, let's go back over here and even try and find a single day that was 12%, right? Like this. Okay. Now we found one. We found one that was 12%, but to the downside. This guy here was about a 15%, but again, I'm just making the point that you don't see that very often, especially recently. We've had one, two, maybe let's call it 3 to 5 daily candles that exceeded that amount, even 10%, let's say. So 3 to 5 in the last this has been since January this year. So yeah, don't expect that that's going to happen, but it could. It very well could. And then we end up getting another push to the upside, and then all of a sudden we're taking out 33,000, which again feasible. This could come up here, but I'm just far more inclined to believe that we probably even get pushed back down a little bit before the day is out. Maybe not a great deal, but maybe get pushed down just a little bit. And mainly because this right here, what we've got going on is a scenario where this high, they're both higher than this high right now, right? We can clearly see that these came up to above this level, and yet on the RSI, we've got a situation where those levels are equivalent. And don't get me wrong, they're close, but they are not equivalent here. Thus, that is a potential bearish divergence, or or hidden bearish. So that, again, feasibility that this thing rolls right back down into here. But that might be where we actually get the real push from anyway. And I'm not opposed to it just coming back down, retesting this. Even if it happens today, I don't care. I mean, I'm looking for it, right? 30,500. Let's head on back down there if you so choose. We're okay with this. But let's go ahead and get on to the small time frames. This is where it's kind of interesting. And, on the shorter term time frames, let me go to the cleaner chart here. It's the one I like to use for the 1 and 4 hour. But you can see here fairly clearly, we've got a few things going here. So this was the trend line going back to Memorial Day weekend. This was the uptrend that Bitcoin started here. And you can see now, where it got rejected by that trend line here. And you can see already where Bitcoin appears that it is going to be rejected at that trend line once again. So, where is the downside target? Well, that's a great question. This itself was a bearish pattern. So we had this little rising channel, no different than this little rising channel. Technically, those are bearish patterns. Okay, this one, but it broke out to the upside. What did it end up doing? Came back down the other side, but it did not go below the level of that little rising channel. Thus, if I'm looking at this and I want to try and be realistic about where that downside target may be, let's take a look at this 618 fib level right here. Oh, 30,500. Do I think that it would be just as feasible that it comes right back down here? Absolutely. So maybe 30,200, and ideally that holds at this point. But also, and just kind of going back to the idea of the rising broadening wedge concept, we've this isn't going to be perfect, but you could see here. Otherwise, let's say that this is the bottom trend line here for the concept that we're talking about. This becomes the upper trend line for it, and now you can see where it is a rising wedge that is broadening as you move up. So it would be just as feasible to see it come down here. Ideally, it comes back up after that and puts in a move that exceeds the top of it. But again, with it being a bearish pattern, it probably stays inside of the pattern. So that would make our next move up to somewhere in here. And that could happen, sometime within the next 3 to 5 days, potentially. So yeah, I mean, again, and now here's the downside of this is that if it does not break to the upside, at that point, that's where we're going to start to look for the potential for the downside targets again. And again, it would make a little bit of sense depending on exactly how these next few weeks play out, simply because of the fact that, again, and as I said earlier, I'm expecting that we will roll back over. It's just a matter of how it looks. So again, whether we get this week green and next week green and then we start turning red again, or we get this week big green and then next week is just kind of hanging out up there where it moves to 35, 36,000 and it just hangs out there for a week. If that scenario plays out, I think that will be great for the altcoins, because that will basically be Bitcoin to a large extent consolidating up in that region before a potential, or distributing, I guess more specifically, because the distribution takes place at the top of moves. But yeah, so that would, again, we've got one of a few scenarios that can play out, and I just, we'll see which one it is. But, I am looking for this thing to roll back over on itself, which I know sounds crazy given that wonderful action we saw and all that good stuff. But I mean, you can see it now. I mean, it's rounding out on top, and the likelihood is when it does decide to make this downside move, we're going to watch this thing fall real fast in just a few hours. And then at that point, it's going to look to find a local bottom again, whether it be here or here. But yeah, let's talk briefly about what a upside target is. If we break out to the upside, let's just say that it happens over here. This is a for instance. Oh, how about that? Puts us dead on our target that we're talking about, that'll get us slightly above this high, right up here. Now again, is it going to happen this week? I don't know, because it put in a decent amount of work over here. But that was the first attempt at breaking and holding this level since it lost it over here. I tend to find that you're going to see a couple of attempts before it finally happens. So let's maybe assume that we get something like this, perhaps, that ends up flagging just a little bit. So let's move this. But then we still maintain this uptrend here. So we come back down, bounce, break this line, maybe it just holds this pattern. Again, there's so many ways this could go. But this I don't see as a scenario that it's going to just hold this thing. You can see it's sitting under this resistance from this price action here. And there's a fairly good reason for all that as well. But let me see if I can find the correct time frame. I think maybe I had myself confused there. But nonetheless, this will be the upside target for the week. And again, you can see where this is totally logical, right? Wherever this ends up being as we make our way to it, that seems like a logical place for there to be the upside target. Now, the other thing would be that we've got several different potential formations coming into play here. We got this kind of top here that seems to be holding up other than these wicks, but you got touch. So maybe really we only get to 32 and change, come back down, retest this level, or come back down, retest some levels. But again, the general concept here in my mind is we're we should at least temporarily be able to hold this level. It seems pretty fair to believe at this point. And then, again, upside targets here, 33 and change. If we get just ridiculous movement this week, this would be our next target. I just don't know if that happens. I mean, let's assume that this thing is its own rising channel, or maybe it is this, rounded bottom. Either way, let's see if this is a rounded bottom. Let's see what that looks like. Same idea, 33 and change there. So I think that's a good target for the week. But again, this being the upside, downside again, I don't expect it to fall below here. And at this point, at least in the short term, everything is this way until it changes. That we're going to hold this level as well. That we're not going to take out the level that we are building right here. So, Yeah, it looks pretty good, actually. I mean, all in all, I think we're going to be happy with what we're getting here so far. Let's zoom back in. Like I said, let's get in on the short-term time frames last time here. And, again, one of a few things happening here. But, again, we've got a few trend lines that could act as resistance against this price action continuing its upward trend right now. I'm far more inclined to believe that we come back down, put in a retest on the 200 simple on the 4-hour. And again, that brings us into this 30,723, maybe even down 30,246. So again, these are the things I'll be looking for here. And that's it. And then we did get a long open up on Bitcoin. So we got some gains, and really that's what we've been sticking with primarily, just because it's easier to track and granted, again, we've talked about how ugly this thing really is chop wise. It's tough to trade that kind of chop, but again, we still went ahead and opened up a long on Bitcoin, got us some gains out there. So hey, looking forward to talking about more of those in the future here. Looking forward to seeing Bitcoin put in some green this week. I guess before we wrap it up, just want to bring in the S&P again. And again, I think these are slightly, they're losing correlation a little bit just because of the cycle. Bitcoin being a 24-hour cycle and the stock market only being an 8-hour cycle, or 9, or 8, 7.5, whatever it actually is. But here's what we're seeing. So the implied open for the S&P is to right up underneath this resistance right here. It's just below it. The only reason I could even potentially fathom the S&P breaking through here today would be in the event that this thing ended up double bottoming and then it kind of comes back up here, which would put it up into this range potentially. Alternatively, I could also see it kind of mirroring the price action from this side, coming up here, getting rejected, and then retesting the low here. And I wouldn't be opposed to that, because again, I still think this thing does come back. I don't think that this move has continuation potential yet, and maybe I end up being wrong. I'm fine if that ends up being the case. I just don't see it. I can see today potentially being green. I can, and kind of closing out up here, but then again, coming back down here, it seems fairly likely to me that we need to retest this 21 simple on the daily chart. It really didn't test it at all yet. And I don't know. I mean, unless it wicks way up here, which is feasible too, it'd just be far more likely that it comes back down into this range to retest. But that being stated, again, S&P starting out up today, Bitcoin starting out up today. Is that going to hold up? Questionable in my mind, but we shall see soon. I think, top side for today, if it exceeds my expectations, I think we do actually potentially come up into this range, treat this as a respected trend line, and then get rejected there. But I'm just as inclined to believe rejection here, rollover, retest of the 200 simple on the 4-hour chart, and then another push to the upside. So let's see what we get. Appreciate you guys. Look forward to catching up soon. Let's get some big gains.